a new per mile based tax on electric vehicles. It was leaked to the newspapers a couple of weeks ago before the budget, and it was met with some skepticism. Was it fabricated in order to cast doubt on the future of the electric vehicle transition? The answer, as it happens, is no. It's now been confirmed as part of the budget, and it is happening. There are two key documents filled with additional information which have now surfaced since the budget itself. The first is the budget. The second is a guide to the consultation process which talks through the tax proposal itself. I've got links to both of these in the description, but I've read through both and picked out everything you'll want to know. A couple of weeks back, when it was just a leaked newspaper report, I covered this story in another video. I was flooded with literally hundreds of comments, and it was great to hear many of your thoughts. So it's clearly a topic people feel strongly about, and rightly so. It has a key impact on travel costs going forward, and the electric vehicle transition as a whole. So let's begin with what's new. Let's start with what to call it. It's being referred to as EVED. I find that name a little confusing as the mechanics of how it works differs massively from the VED system that we already know, vehicle excise duty, which is also known as road tax, but it's in addition to, not instead of the existing vehicle excise duty, and there are no plans to restructure that, apart from one specific case, which I'll cover later. Perhaps the good news is it won't be introduced immediately. It will come into effect from April 2028. The most important thing you need to know, something which isn't at the forefront of most recent articles, is while it's starting at 3 pence for electric vehicles and 1.5 pence for plug-in hybrids, as many have speculated, it won't stay at that rate. In fact, that 3 pence per mile rate will last precisely 1 year only. That's because it's linked to inflation, specifically the Consumer Price Index or CPI. By its nature, the CPI figure varies year on year. On this chart, in light blue, is the CPI from the last 10 years. I've mapped out how the cost of EVD would change based on two possible paths. Looking at the last 10 years, the average has been around about 4%, but the Bank of England's target is 2%. Pick for yourself which you believe is more realistic going forward. If it's 4%, however, you would be paying around, just over 3.5 pence per mile by the 5th year. Both documents point to the 3 pence starting value being chosen because it's believed to be roughly 50% equivalent to that of the fuel duty paid by petrol and diesel users. As such, they conclude it's a fair starting point which still incentivises the adoption of electric vehicles. I believe that value to be a slight stretch because it relies on assumptions of specific efficiency values, but my calculations are roughly in that ballpark when judging by that metric. So why is this EVED being introduced? As I speculated in the previous video, fuel duty revenue is declining. The government had done some projections which suggest that the existing 24 billion annually reduces to just 12 billion in the 2030s as people transition to electric vehicles. The documents claim that 2 billion of the new EVD collections will go to upkeep and maintenance of the road. So now, a big question: who is exempt from this? The bad news is all existing electric vehicles pay this. It's not a scheme which only applies to ones after a certain date or anything like that. But there are exemptions for vans, buses, coaches and HGVs at present. They claim this is because the transition of those vehicles is less advanced. As such, they are unlikely to make sufficient revenue from that stream of taxation. Though I strongly suspect, and this is purely my opinion, not based off anything in the documents, that they will be included at a later date. Finally, individuals who are exempt from vehicle excise duty as a result of being on disability living allowance or personal independence payments will still be liable for EVED because it's being pitched as a direct equivalent to fuel duty. It won't, however, affect exemption status for existing vehicle excise duty. How is the mileage tracked? Despite speculation from some, drivers will not be required to fit trackers. They say to protect privacy. Drivers will be expected to self-report estimated mileage, then pay a top-up for any shortfall following a mileage verification process. Excess, if you estimate too high, can be put towards the following year's tax, or refunds can be requested in specific circumstances. Who performs the mileage verification? The approved network of MOT garages will be expected to carry out mileage checks on all electric vehicles. They will receive government funding for this specific purpose, as despite it being a quick task, it still requires time. Cars under 3 years, not required to have an MOT yet, will be invited, as they put it in the document, to a mileage verification every year. I suspect this will be mandatory, much like MOTs themselves. For us, that sounds like an additional trip to the garage every year for someone to read an odometer. Are there any positives for electric vehicle drivers? There is one change to the expensive car supplement for vehicle excise duty, which currently costs £425 a year for anyone with a car worth more than £40,000. That £40,000 threshold is set to change, increasing to £50,000 in April 2026. In addition, the electric car grant funding is secured until the year of 2029-2030 to, in their words, support the British automotive industry, though I wouldn't get too excited by this, as the full amount of £3,750 only applies to 3 cars currently. The grant to me feels like a bit of a token gesture to be seen to be supporting the EV adoption. Having that while introducing a new tax seems at cross purposes. So that's the facts of everything new, but it does leave some unresolved issues which I feel I should point out. In my opinion, the biggest oversight with this policy as it's currently written is it punishes vehicle efficiency. With fuel duty, the total paid depends on the mileage driven and the vehicle or driver efficiency. A pay-by-mile taxation scheme excludes efficiency from both the driver and the car, which is something which should really be encouraged. On that basis, I would suggest a tweak to add a banding based on either efficiency or vehicle weight, as heavier cars are perceived to wear the surface of the road more. An alternate idea would be to base that on vehicle value, but I'm not so keen on that approach, as some higher value cars can still be highly efficient. Next, there is a strong case to say that pay-per-mile taxation schemes are unfairly biased against those living in rural locations. Those living in the countryside often face a greater need to travel long distances compared to those living in cities. Add to that, the public transport is typically limited. City travel contributes more to congestion too, though it can be argued that that aspect is covered by congestion charges already. And there's at least another couple of edge cases which require some additional consideration. What about those using their car abroad for continental road trips, for example? They would be racking up mileage on their car, which is recorded annually, but not on UK roads and not using UK fuel. Does it seem fair to be paying a UK tax on that? And what about those who use vehicles on private land, like farms, etc.? A proportion of that mileage might not be on public roads. Is it right to tax that? What do you think? Are you surprised this policy is going ahead? How would you tweak the policy to improve it, and how will it impact you? Let me know in the comments, it's great to hear your thoughts. And if you want to take things further than a comment in a YouTube video, the government is running a consultation process which is open until the 18th of March. Anyone affected by the policy can help advise via the consultation process. The survey asks 15 questions. I consider the very first one, which reads, do you have any views on the government's proposal for the design and scope of EVED to be the most relevant to most everyday users? Hopefully this brings you up to speed with all things EVED, as it's now known. If you have found this informative, I would very much appreciate it if you could hit that like button. Also, check out other videos on my channel if you're interested in solar, heat pumps, or my own personal renewable energy journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.